Hello. So, haven't been doing this in a while because I actually went out of the city, and when I came back, it was kind of hard for me to go back on track. It's not the most comfortable thing for me to do this kind of videos, but it's episode 16, I think, and so far so good, so I'll keep making them. And please, if you ever have any questions or any subjects that you would like me to talk about, just leave it in the comments below. And today I'm gonna talk about what I believe is one of the most important things any person can have in their intellectual toolkit in order to properly understand the world, which is the difference between philosophy and sophistry. Now, interestingly enough, for me at least, this has always taken me back to two stories I heard back in the day, which are supposed to be taken mythologically or at least folklorically and not literally, which are the story about the Hermetic Guild and their interaction with the god Thoth in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, and the word abracadabra in the magical folklore. Now, the first one, it was pretty interesting because the idea was that when the god Thoth, which is the god of wisdom, knowledge, mathematics, architecture, and language, came to human beings and gave them his knowledge, this group of Hermetic people had an inner argument, an inner discussion about whether they should give people or not the power of language, of writing things. And this was interesting because the argument was based around the fact that language is a double-edged sword, and this is because language is not reality but a symbol of it. And I've made videos about this before, so you can check them out, but pretty much the idea is that the word orange is not the same as an actual orange, and that confusing the symbol for the object in reality can actually confuse your mind into believing that what can be said about something or a situation or an object or a concept about reality is not the same thing. It's not necessarily what is actually true. Now, this group of people in this myth knew that, and knew that language could be used either for good or for evil. And for them, good and evil was defined by the difference between revealing truth through language, truth and reason through language, or concealing it from human beings. And this is pretty interesting because the word abracadabra, and this is just one of the very definitions of the word, or the etymological definitions of the word, is as I speak, I reveal the truth, or through my words, truth is revealed. And that's the one I'm using, at least for this video. And the idea was that through time, since eventually people got their hands around speaking, then reading and writing any given language, the mission or the importance of people that were able to elucidate the difference between what was truth and what was not became of an essential quality. And I guess the best way to explain it is that quote-unquote light spellcasters or magicians, and this is what I'm trying to get at, used language to cast spells, quite literally, in order to reveal something that was truthful about the world and our human condition and our environment, and like what's the proper way to engage with it. Now, the other side used language in order to create ideas that were really compelling and really apparently truth, but that when analyzed enough were revealed as lies for the most part. And this is where the difference between philosophy and sophistry comes in. Philosophy, for the most part at least, is the use of reason in order to seek out and acquire truth, while sophistry is the idea of engaging with powerful arguments that create a sense of truth, rather than it being actually truth. And this is what the Greeks got out of the whole situation, basically, that either you believe that there was truth, unattainable as it is, complex as it may be, especially when you get into more convoluted subjects. Because let's say that when you think about fire and you proclaim that if you put your hand close to fire, you get burned, which is an objectively truthful, verifiable situation. When you're presented with a more complex situation, it's harder to understand that logic. That meaning that outside your opinion about whether fire burns your hand or not, you will burn your hand if you put your hand too close to the fire. Now, throughout history, these two groups of people have been battling out, whether consciously or unconsciously, for the minds of people. Spell casting and the idea of magicians go back to that same principle. And it's interesting because we don't hear about it too much, in the sense that we think of magic as this invocation of fire and ice and the elemental forces through the power of a human being. But it was always about the use of language, and how the proper use of it could reveal, as I've said, could reveal something truthful, or it could be used in order to conceal that same truth, or convince someone that another thing was the actual correct interpretation of what was happening. And spell casting exists in every area of our lives, even today, of course, because we're born with a certain language and with a certain set of ideas that have been influenced by the discoveries or conceptualizations of people that have come before us. So it doesn't matter where you are, since we are all, quote-unquote, trapped within or submerged in language. There are certain concepts and ideas that influence our way of understanding the world that are not necessarily true, or that are true. And the idea of spell casting is whether trying to convince you that some of these are incorrect, or that you can see it in another way. And the problem of this situation is that since language, as I've said, is not the same thing as the thing that they are trying to point at, meaning that the symbols are not the same thing as reality, if you're trying to peddle, if you're trying to push for an idea to be victorious over another one, regardless of it being true or not, then beyond the fact that human beings may be able or not to discern that you're lying, it creates an effect in the world, especially, of course, if people believe you. And a good example of this is that before, people used to think that thunder and lightning was caused by a god. This is a misinterpretation, or like a mythological mythological read on the situation in terms of gods and the supernatural. And now we know that thunder and lightning are electrostatic charges in clouds. And it doesn't take away the fascinating event that it is, but it changes the interpretation of what we are seeing or experiencing or watching through a screen. And this has always happened, meaning that right now in our current situation as a modern society, we may have the illusion that we are beyond that we have manifested enough truth in order to understand the ground, the environment that we're in. But the truth of the matter is that in a lot of different disciplines, we may be incorrect, or that we may be interpreting things in a less than adequate way. So this is where the power of words come in, and the responsibility of speaking impeccably. A lot of ancient traditions understood that and actually had it as one of the most important aspects of keeping your soul untainted, meaning that you didn't allow your own machinations, your own ideations to supersede what was true and what was right. And of course, the problem with this is that since truth and what is right are so mercurial in nature, meaning that they're elusive for the mind, as I've said, especially in complex situations, then sometimes the incorrect idea can prevail if it's argumented in a better way. And I think that, you know, there's a saying that it's like people prefer, I don't know how it goes, but it's something like people prefer an enchanting lie than a harsh truth. Because the fact of the matter is that we're emotional beings and emotion charges. But that's the exact reason why we have to be careful about what we believe and what we accept as true when someone else or any medium of conveyance is trying to tell us what is happening or what the world is. Because we've seen it throughout our history as a civilization, as a human civilization, meaning that there has been a lot of times where we've been able to define or interpret the existence of a human being, whether for their race or their ethnicity or their beliefs, as less than human, as unworthy, as ignorant, as something that deserves to be punished. And the power of ideas is so strong that we lose track of the person in front of us and we just see that idea. And this happens still up until today, and in ways that most people don't understand that they are actually falling prey to. It doesn't matter if you're black, if you're white, if you're brown, if you come from a third world country, it doesn't matter. What should matter is the person that's right in front of you, right? The thing is that since we operate through language, a lot of things can be said about those groups of people or those individuals that distort our perception about them. And this is just one case, of course, but I think it's a clear example of how much the mind can distort or malleate the immanent reality, the ineffable reality, which is the reality outside of words and concepts. And I guess that coming from a background in advertisement, which for me is the production of illusions in order to get something out of people, I feel a moral responsibility to explain that, to make that clear. You can create a narrative that is powerful enough, emotional enough, that you feel binded to it and that you feel that it is correct or accurate. And I've produced narratives that make people buy certain products because they felt that it would correlate with the narrative that I was creating in terms of them being a better father, a better student, a better young adult, or whatever it is, because it's easy. Or rather than it's easy, it's doable, and you can get something out of it. And that brings me back, I guess, to the nature of human beings. Human beings have always a light side and a dark side. Human beings have, the yin and yang. And the idea is that, sadly enough, unless you're a mature person and a person that is willing to check yourself for your own flaws and your own gaps and your own blind spots in your thinking, you may be doing a lot of harm to others, unwillingly or unknowingly, because you may believe that what you're peddling is true, or what you're trying to advocate is the best course of action. And the best way that I've dealt with that is to actually pay attention to what people do after they're done saying their piece. Because a lot of movements, a lot of quote unquote, movements for the good, quote unquote good, after they say their piece in the name of God, in the name of righteousness, in the name of freedom, in the name of what's best, in the name of people, in the name of anything. You can do the most heinous and the most terrible acts and the worst crimes against your fellow human beings because you're convinced by an idea. A spell has been casted upon you in order to believe such a thing. So watch out. Pay attention. It's hard, but it's important. And that's it. And I'll be back. Subscribe if you like this video. And if you have any subjects that you would like me to talk about or any questions, put them down in the comments and I'll do my best to reach out and write back. Thanks for watching.